Boom, we're back live once again. It's been a minute. It's been a long time. We've been going through all the proceedings with Netflix and all that stuff. But I'm going to keep this real short. This is going to be less than a half an hour because at 4 o'clock, I'm going to be tuning in to my homie H Prism from Anti-Pop Consortium. I'm going to be tuning into his radio show that happens every at 4 o'clock on every Saturday. So at 4 o'clock this Saturday, right after this lecture, this is going to be like a 20-minute lecture because this is the end of the old lecture that I was dropping. Yo, peace up, peace up. What's up, Nina? What's up, Dylan? What's up, everybody? Miss Netpic. Yeah, so this is going to be a short lecture, like 20 minutes, because I want to finish by 4 o'clock so I can start bumping my homie H Prism's radio show. And you can go to Instagram.com slash HPrism, I believe, right? HPrism with a Z, Prism with a Z. So we're going to be continuing the Bassnectar allegations, the Bassnectar complaint, because everybody's talking about, R. Kelly, everybody's talking about Polite, everybody's talking about black males in the media, but you don't hear, it's like a Caucasian male can literally traffic people across state to state and be the biggest rave artist of all time, or not all time, but I mean, like, one of the big people of the EDM movement of right now. He's one of the biggest. And so we're going to finish the complaint. I believe I got to page 13 before, so we're going to start back off at page 13, and we're just going to finish and run through this complaint. All right, so these are very serious charges that are up against him. He denies all these things, but if you read the actual complaint, it's like he's not getting out of this because obviously there's a lot of people involved. He's just red-handed. Even his close partner, we already went through that in the last video. One of his close audio partners, is he distance himself, and everybody's jumping ship with Bassnectar. But I just think it's important, because I was covering this Bassnectar thing before the R. Kelly stuff, the new R. Kelly stuff, the trafficking, R.I.C.O law stuff started happening. But he might Bassnectar and all these rave people might get thrown down on R.I.C.O laws and all that stuff. So we're gonna flip around. All right, so this is back to the new season. So shout out to all the TTM Academy students, all the ones that are still here, all the racist ones probably left. So bye, see y'all later. Have fun, with your friends. But we're gonna be taking the ship in new directions. We've been focusing hardcore on turntablism, but we're going to be expanding with rap. We're going to be expanding with different technologies and taking things to higher levels. And we're also going to be, we're dropping the Moorborg series of lectures this semester. So welcome to a new semester, and we're going to have a lot of dope speakers on. We're going to start the Moorborg lecture series with we got a seer, the Duke of Tears, a scholar, genius, cat that's been putting stuff down for decades. And we also got like Orko Elohim. We got a dope lecture from Orko. So the Moorborg lecture series is going to be pretty hot. And we're taking turntablism back. We're going to be taking rap back, but it's easier to take turntablism back first. So we're just starting out bit by bit. All right, so now we're still draining the swamp. We're draining the swamp of all the racists, the sickos, pedos, all that stuff out of turntablism, out of the house of hip hop, because EDM is hip hop. All those groups, whether it's Skrillex or whether all that's hip hop. Dubstep is hip hop. They try to rename it and all that stuff every decade, every half a decade. They try to make some new genre names, but that's all hip hop. Dead Prez started the first dubstep beat called hip hop. The first dropouts on the ones, a wobbly bassline bass, that's a lead wobble bass. Dead Prez started all that. All right, so I'm gonna flip around. Now, this is a lecture about Bassnectar and his current allegations and the lawsuit and the victims. We're gonna be talking about EDM first to get things a little bit of perspective, to take a bigger picture look. And people say DJs are the new rock stars, which is true in the sense that turntables have been selling more than guitars for a long time. You know, and but the thing is that what a lot of people don't know about the whole EDM movement is EDM really is kind of a movement created kind of like pop music in the sense that it has a racial connotation. If you go back to my lecture from Berlin about a decade ago, maybe, I did a lecture on genre segregationism. You can refer to that lecture. And what segregationism is the practice of um, creating genres that aren't based off of musical content. It's based off of creating genres based off of race. So let's say you take broken beat, those are for black producers. If a black producer makes something glitchy, then they call it broken beat. But if a Caucasian producer makes something glitchy, they'll call it IDM or intelligent dance music, which denotes that Euro producers are smarter than the black producers who are breaking the beats or making broken beat, right? We've got dirty South. All the connotations are generally negative. Trap, right? Trapped in a maze, trapped in a trap house, right? So the dirty South, the grime, right? Grime, a lot of the genres they apply to us tend to be following a pattern of deprecation. And a lot of white supremacy is actually just deprecation in general. So if you look up EDM and you type EDM artists in Google, all you're going to see is pretty much males of the Euro diaspora. And that's kind of what the EDM movement was all about, was rehashing all the electronic motifs from the past and calling it something new. And at first it was just like the Diplo, A-Track, and Skrillex, Trinity or whatever. But then it expanded to all these guys, all the bigger guys that are even bigger now, and people that passed away, Avicii and all those people. And all they were doing was stuff that black producers had already done with different genres of techno and things like that over the years. Because let's say, for instance, if you take new wave music, and if I type, let's say I type new wave artists, right? You see new wave artists, it comes up, it's all Caucasian, right? But if at the same time, if a black singer were to sing over the exact same type of beats, they call it freestyle music. So I'll type freestyle R and B artists, and you'll see what happens. See, look, it's all black freestyle R&B artists, like all the freestyle music, right? Now I'm gonna type in broken beat artists, right? Broken beat artists, it's all black. See, right? It's very black. There's one Caucasian cat right here, but it's generally black. You can see if a broken beat is gonna, right? But if I type IDM artists, which is intelligent dance music, IDM artists, boom, what I was saying is it's all Caucasian. You don't see any black dudes. They won't let us be in that category. So what genre segregationism shows is that most genres actually aren't genres based on actual musical programming. Most genres are actually based on race. So, for instance, if you take pop music, if a black person does it, they call it R&B. If a Caucasian person does it, like Justin Timberlake, they call it pop, right? And yeah, so let me go to the next thing. All right, so let me go back to where we were. We were in EDM. So just like we have IDM, which was intelligent dance music, EDM was created in a similar way, and to stand for electronic dance music. But there's always been electronic dance music. So let's go to Wikipedia to see what the actual thing is. So electronic dance music, EDM, also known as dance music, club music, or simply dance, is a broad range of percussive electronic music genres made largely for nightclubs, raves, and festivals. So you see, it's totally vague. There's no signature things about it, right? It's totally vague. Like that's a very vague definition. It is generally produced for playback by DJs who create seamless selections of tracks. Let me bring this kind of together. Called a mix by um, segueing from one record to another. Now, EDM producers also perform their music live in concert or festival setting in what is sometimes called a live PA, like hooking up a laptop or, and that's all this stuff has already been done. So in the late 80s and early 90s, following the emergence of raving, pirate radios, and an upsurge of interest in club culture, EDM achieved what so they're already talking about EDM as if it existed already in the past. So they're just rehashing old names, right? And this is part of what some of the early, the original techno producers were talking about, where they were being boxed out of the industry, the black producers, right? Because a lot of people think techno comes from Caucasian people, when in fact it's a black art form, right? And we're talking about dance techno music. I'm not talking about Kraftwerk techno, because that wasn't intended for clubs. I'm talking about dance techno, not like music electronique and Stockhausen and all that type of abstract techno. I'm talking about dance techno is a black genre, black American genre, multiple genres of music. All right. So it's a group of genres. In the United States at that time, acceptance of dance culture was not universal outside of New York City, although both electro and Chicago house music were influential both in Europe and the United States. Mainstream media outlets and the record industry remained openly hostile to it. There was also a perceived association between EDM and drug culture, which led governments at state and city levels to enact laws and policies intended to halt the spread of rave culture. So you see, so this whole EDM thing is clearly, they're talking about EDM as if it existed in the past. It's like, but yet it didn't. Like, we know that nobody was saying EDM in the 80s or the 90s. That's a actively going back in the past and changing things. All right. So let's fast forward to EDM where we are now, so we can see that. Now let's say I type techno artists. If I type techno artists, look what pops up. Right? We see it's still it's very very pretty much Caucasian, right? Except the old school cats, right? Like we see Carl Cox right there. We see Mills, Mr. Mills, right? The original cats, but that's all we see, right? Right? So you see, we're being boxed out of our own industries. It's very, very few. Google is a good representation of how the industry actually is. It's actually even worse, people, as far as people getting paid. All right. So let's move on now. So now we're going to be talking about Bassnectar. This whole thing is about Bassnectar, and the things that happen in this are so heinous that I didn't want to start it out at the beginning of this lecture. That's why I kind of did like a general overview of EDM and what genre segregationism is. All right. So let's go to the actual complaint. So this is the actual complaint. So in the United States, the District Court for the Middle District of Tennessee, Rachel Ransbottom and Alexis Bowling are the plaintiffs. That means they're the ones that are suing Bassnectar. And they're suing Lauren Ashton, aka Amorphous Music Incorporated, Bassnectar Touring Incorporated, Red Light Management Incorporated, C3 Presents LLC, Interactive Giving Fund. So these are different, I guess, organizations that he runs that have money that they're seeking compensation for. So complaint, civil action, the plaintiffs Rachel Ramsbottom and Alexis Bowling by and through undersigned counsel hereby states as follows in support of their complaint against defendants Lauren Ashton, aka Bassnectar, Amorphous Music Incorporated, Bassnectar Touring Incorporated, Bassnectar Touring, Red Light Management Incorporated, Red Light, C3 LLC, C3, and Interactive Giving Fund Interactive, herein collectively referred to as the defendants. All right, and it's very important to note that Bassnectar, for those that don't know who he is, this is Bassnectar, and he is a very very big EDM DJ. Like as I was saying before, EDM is kind of an exclusionary genre, and he's one of the biggest DJs. And now, I'm pointing out this article and this whole story because of the fact that I'm draining the swamp. I'm draining the turntablism swamp. And we're starting top down. We're starting out with turntablism, but I'm draining the whole DJ swamp. But EDM DJs, many of them do scratch, especially the ones that are like the more hardcore ones, like the Bassnectars and stuff like that. I believe he was in a metal band first, and then he got into DJing and making beats and stuff like that. All right, now so let's go back to where we were. All right, so now so this is part of this is another part of the series of draining the swamp. We're draining the scratch swamp. We're draining the DJ swamp, right? Taking back our art form, right? And the Moorborg conference is coming soon. It's coming this year. We're gonna have the Moorborg conference. It's a Black turntablist conference. A Borg full of Moors. All right. So introduction now. With the rapid rise of technological advances in the 21st century, a new genre of music was born. Electronic dance music, properly known as EDM, captured a generation. As this new genre rose in popularity, so did the industry around it. Festivals and concerts became an immensely profitable venture as hundreds and thousands of youth flocked to the events around the country. So this is just an introduction, giving some background, and like I was saying before, as you know, when people say DJs are the new rock stars, it really is true. And you know, so Bassnectars is equivalent to like a is equivalent to like a Pink Floyd or a you know, like one of the bigger groups of you know, like the psych rock era. And just like with the rock era, we'll do lectures in the future. You know, all that music was also stolen from black artists, right? All, you know, line for line sometimes, you know, chorus for chorus sometimes. So Lauren Ashton, popularly known by his stage name Bassnectar, was regarded as one of the leading artists of the EDM scene, traveling from coast to coast, performing shows and headlining large festivals. His dubstep-tinged electronica and strobe light experience showcased in larger clubs like the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. and New York's Terminal 5. Now, as far as dubstep, I'm going to be doing a whole series on why dubstep is actually just a subset of hip hop. It's actually just down tempo bassline crump, basically bassline, you know, bassline hip hop. You know, it's really just a subset. You know, because they try to act like it's some whole new genre, but that's what happens when people are, you know, taking genres from the black artists. They rename them these different names and try to call it some new micro genre, try to add some new name and try to, you know, push black artists out of it. And we all know that Binga actually quit because there was so much racism in the industry. I'm gonna write Binga quits dubstep. So I'm gonna type Binga quits dubstep. Binga on why he quit dubstep, the future of dubstep. You see, because he was like one of the only black DJs in it, and he quit. That means that he got shut out when you know, when this whole new generation came in, all these Bassnectars and all these people. So let's get back to the complaint. Now, so Bassnectars, and also, you know, Dead Prez, when they made that song Hip Hop, you know, like hip hop, that's really the first dubstep song. Because people would try to say, oh, you know, Burial invented dubstep and all that stuff, but that's just some BBC, you know, propaganda, because BBC is, you know, run by the Queen, and you know, they banned grime for a second. You know, they were banning the forward rhythm. You know, they were banning all types of stuff, and then trying to say like, oh yeah, white artists started all this stuff. When in reality, bassline house was bumping in the hood, and bassline crunk or the down tempo was bumping in the suburbs, and it was all because of the grime beats. Dubstep is grime. Dubstep came out of grime, but they try to act like it's some whole new thing, and Burial, you know, invented it. Like if you actually listen to Burial's beats, it's really just his stuff is like dark garage, you know. You know what I'm saying? And garage isn't down tempo, heavy wobble with the dropouts on the one, you know, but Kanye, I don't know if Kanye produced hip hop. Some people say he produced that song, but whoever produced that song, Hip Hop by Dead Prez, that's really one of the first dubstep songs. And even if you go to Mr. Wazzo's, you know, early stuff, you know, he was doing bassline trip hop, you know, the precursor to the dubstep. So, and even all the turntablist stuff, all the dirt style records and turntablism, we were always doing dubstep type sounds. Like even with DJ Craze's sets, he was making dubstep type beats, you know, and a lot of the beats that people were scratching over were dubstep beats, you know. So really, dubstep came out of hip hop, but that's a whole nother lecture in the future. But that's important to factor that into this, because Bassnectar he's making money off of the idea of bass and DJing and things, you know, concepts that are, you know, Black American concepts, from the techno of Detroit to the hip hop of New York to
to the heavy bass, dub and reggae and ska and everything from Jamaica, all American inventions. So let me get back to this. So Bassnectar's popularity became so great, in fact, that he began to host his own festivals, including Bass Center and Bass Island. Out of 9 headlining shows reported to Billboard Box Score in 2011, Bassnectar sold out 8 of them and grossed a total of $1.1 million. Bassnectar's following was a cultural movement in itself. His fan dubbed bassheads, not unlike the Grateful Dead's Deadheads, would travel around the country making just enough money to get to the next show, some attending upwards of 35 shows in a year. San Francisco Weekly describes the Bassnectar culture as follows. In a lot of ways, Bassnectar is a cult of personality. Ashton serves as a kind of tribal leader for his fans, a big brother with bass. He sees the project as a cultural and social concern, not merely a musical one, and speaks of his hardcore fans, known as bassheads. And, if you go to Public Enemy, I'm going to type Public Enemy, I'm going to type Public Enemy bass heads, right? And if you type Public Enemy, it says Public Enemy Night of the Living Bassheads. So even bassheads is a hip hop term for when people were on that bass. People were on drugs back in the day. They would call them bassheads, crackheads. Basically. So that's also a hip hop term. This is all hip hop terminology. They're wearing baggy pants. And let's see. So like a family, bassheads in turn show loyalty for Ashton and a communitarian spirit. It's a subculture of thousands across the country who are ready to show up anywhere he plays. Unlike many artists whose success relies on their record sales, Bassnectar's clout was in his live performances. According to Bassnectar, because of our touring numbers, we were so monstrous last year, I just realized I could put out a CD and every noteworthy publication in the world could ignore it. But we're still going to have 3,000 kids show up on Monday night in Kentucky with my logo tattooed on their effing neck. All right, so self-described Twitter. So this guy was really big. He's got tattoos of people on his neck. People have tattoos of his logo on their neck. Now, self-described on Twitter as a collaborative music project, not a person, Bassnectar utilized his platform to encourage adolescents and young people to become activists. He developed a charity for this purpose called the Interactive Giving Fund, formerly known as Be Interactive. It partnered with organizations like Rock the Vote to get bassheads registered to vote, and Conscious Alliance to organize fans to help work with local food shelters on multiple occasions. Bassnectar also offered therapy, scholarships, through various organizations. All right, now a feature of the charity was its Ambassadors program, a carefully selected group of young people tasked with generating ideas and connecting with the basshead community. Ambassadors were also found at shows where they would search for others like them, even selecting fans for opportunities to get backstage and meet Bassnectar. As described by former fan, Bassnectar was postured as an altruistic activist organization oriented by one man who provided a sense of belonging and righteousness to youth that may have felt like they never got that in their lives before. He gave them friends, fun, and a purpose. In many ways, he was held out by himself and others to his followers, both adults and children, as godlike. Yet Bassnectar's purported noble actions and reputation of being in service to some greater good were nothing more than a veil to mask his sinister desires and actions and the means to his power and influence to groom and ultimately sexually victimize underage girls. Bassnectar solicited underage girls through various means, including, but not limited to, Twitter, the Be Interactive Ambassadors, and live shows, presenting himself as an advisor and peer in order to gain young girls' trust. Despite the fact that he was in his mid-30s at the time, Bassnectar was able to conceal, yet maintain consistent contact with these underage girls through secretive messaging apps, which he required all communication to be funneled through so that he could groom them for eventual commercial sex acts, get them to send him sexually explicit photographs, and further exploit them for his own gratification. After ingratiating himself into their lives, Bassnectar provided these underage girls tickets to his shows, exposing them to his thousands of young followers, baseheads, and a culture premised on ideals such as community and collectivism. All right, so this sounds very similar to like some of the Africa Bambaataa stuff with him and the Zulu Nation, and him abusing teen boys, and and the Zulu Nation hiding it. I personally feel the Zulu Nation needs to change their name and absolve their name, just like kind of like how Planned Parenthood needs to change their name due to Margaret Sanger's eugenics history. All right, so Bassnectar would also dictate how these underage girls were to behave, who the underage girls, who the underage girls could hang out with, and mandate that their contact with him be hidden from their parents and the public. After performances, Bassnectar would invite these underage girls to his hotel room and demand that the girls shower so that they were clean. He would then have sex with them, requiring the sex to be unprotected, without a condom, and would provide large sums of cash and other items in value in exchange. Bassnectar would also require these underage girls to take sexually explicit photographs of themselves with their cell phones and send them to him in violation of child pornography statute 18 U.S. 2252. This action for damages is brought by plaintiffs who are minor victims of sexual trafficking, child blank, and other torturous acts and omissions who were groomed and ultimately exploited at the hands of Bassnectar. It was abundantly clear that Bassnectar was targeting and engaging in commercial sex acts with minors and utilizing his shows and organizations to accomplish the exploitation of young girls for his own sexual gratification. In fact, it was a running joke among those associated with Bassnectar that he would have to find a date at a high school dance. That's sickening. As such, remaining defendants are and I've heard that we're going to go into more than just this complaint, but in a lot of the allegations, people are saying that this stuff was true, and a lot of people knew about that culture, and all these baseheads that were his fans were kind of protecting him, and and feeding that culture. As such, remaining defendants are companies that participated in a venture and benefited economically from Bassnectar and his companies while he was trafficking the plaintiffs and other girls. As a result of Bassnectar's trafficking of minor girls and solicitation and possession of child pornography, the remaining defendants knew, or in the very least should have known, Bassnectar was trafficking minor girls for commercial sex and other illegal activity. As such, each of the defendants in the violation of 18 U.S.C. Code 1595 knowingly participated in or benefited from facilitating a venture that they knew or should have known to be engaging in sex trafficking in violation of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A. Plaintiff Rachel Ramsbottom is an adult female and a citizen of the state of Tennessee. Plaintiff Alex Bowling is an adult female and a citizen of the state of Kentucky. Plaintiff's claims are properly joined. The plaintiff's claims are properly joined pursuant to Fed R. Civ Pro 20 as they arise out of the same transaction, occurrence, or series of transactions or occurrences and involve common questions of law and or fact, namely the systematic grooming, trafficking, and solicitation and possession of child P-word by Bassnectar and the knowledge of the same by the other defendants. Defendant Lauren Ashton herein after Bassnectar and an individual is an adult male and resident of California with a home address of blank. Defendant Amorphous Music Incorporated herein. Amorphous, a corporation, is incorporated in the state of California and headquartered at 235 Park Avenue South, 9th floor, New York, New York 10003. Ashton is the founder, chairman, figurehead, and chief executive and icon of Amorphous Music Incorporated. Defendant Bassnectar Touring Incorporated hereinafter Bassnectar Touring, a corporation, is incorporated in the state of Delaware, blah, blah, blah. All right. Bassnectar utilized Bassnectar Touring to target, recruit, and ultimately victimize young girls like the plaintiffs for sexual exploitation. Defendant and Interactive Giving Fund, formerly known as Be Interactive and hereinafter referred to as IGF, is a California corporation with headquarters located at blank. Bassnectar is the founder and the former chairman, figurehead, executive chief, and icon of IGF. Bassnectar utilized IGF to target, recruit, and ultimately victimize young girls like the plaintiffs for um, sex exploitation. Um, Defendant Red Light Management LLC, hereinafter Red Light, a corporation incorporated in the state of Oregon and is headquartered at blah blah blah, New York. Red Light Management participated in a venture with Bassnectar in which it managed, promoted, recruited, and profited from its venture with Ashton Reed Light. Red Light knew or should have known Bassnectar was engaging in the trafficking of and unlawful conduct with minors. Defendant C3 Presents LLC, hereinafter C3, a corporation, is incorporated in the state of Texas and is headquartered at blank in Texas. C3 presents all of its relevant C3 presents at all relevant times, managed Bassnectar, and produced large festivals where Bassnectar performed, including Electric Daisy Carnival, Camp Bisco, and uh, Lollapalooza. Bassnectar utilized these festivals, concerts, and events to target young girls like the plaintiffs for sex exploitation. C3 Presents participated in managing, promoting, recruiting, and profiting from its venture with Ashton. C3 knew or should have known Bassnectar was engaging in the trafficking of minors. This court has subject matter jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. Co. 1332 in that plaintiffs and defendants are citizens of different states, and the amount in controversy is in excess of $75,000. The court also has subject matter jurisdiction pursuant to 18 U.S.C. Code 1595, which provides the district courts of the United States jurisdiction over violations of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591. This court is an appropriate district court for the United States in accordance with this other USC code. All right, so for those that don't know, for those in other countries, they might not understand that every state in the United States is actually technically like a different country, where Washington is basically managing all the different states. So governors are really, more like like a mini little prime minister or something. The governors have a lot of power. They're, so basically, each state, is that's why they're talking about the jurisdiction and using federal court. So federal court has jurisdiction over the whole country, while each state court only has jurisdiction over the state. All right. So the venue is proper in this district pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1391 because a substantial part of the events or missions giving rise to the claims asserted in this action occurred in the judicial district where this action is brought. Facts common to all plaintiffs. Okay, so let's just hop out of this for a second. This is very deep, all this stuff, and get back into more of what's going on and what happened. All right, so I'm gonna play some of this by one of his friends. This guy is Ill Gates Music, and I'm gonna play some of what Ill Gates was saying. So I'm gonna play this.
And especially
so Ill Gates at first he was like supporting his homie like this must be just some crazy allegations, but then he started to he heard a specific message where his friend where Bassnectar was talking about telling a girl like don't say anything or he could go to jail. So this is him talking about it. This is one of his touring buddies, one of the people. I believe he might have been on his label too. So this guy's Ill Gates, and notice too, a lot of the EDM people have this very similar hairstyle like the Skrillex style, where one side is shaved off. But if you actually do the research, you will find that I'm actually one of the first dubstep techno kind of people to have one side of the head shaved and the long hair on the other side. But that's a whole nother story. We'll do my influences in the game in general. But this is Ill Gates, who's was one of his friends. So I'm gonna press play because the that lawsuit stuff can get kind of boring, but we'll get back to that.
Had such a rich and storied life as Lauren. And when they're coming into a relationship with him where he is this famous rock star.
Oh, and I want to just pause this because this relates to Jay-Z apologizes for his chartbuster song Big Pimpin'. So right now Star, is live and doing that show. So Jay-Z's apologizing. People are starting to come for all these rappers and what they're saying and being accountable for their lyrics. Right? All right, so let me press play.
All kinds of money and power and social influence, and people looked upon him as a god, So I think it's really, there's a power dynamic there that is just already problematic.
That's why I was, comparing Bassnectar with Bambaataa because, a lot of people in hip hop look at Bambaataa as like a hip hop god and you can't say anything bad about him and this and that, but it's like, yo, dude is an admitted criminal.
And if you're 18, you are old enough to be able to vote or smoke cigarettes or go to war or drive a car or go into credit card debt. The age of 18 is certainly the age of consent. Now, there can be problems going into a relationship with such a lopsided power dynamic, even if you are above 18, but it's not necessarily illegal. It could be abusive, it could be coercive, it could be an unhealthy relationship, but it's not necessarily illegal.
So earlier he was just talking about how Bassnectar basically, was into younger women, into 17-year-olds, he was into not only young girls that were legal, because in the United States, what a lot of people understand, each state has different ages as far as the age of consent. Some states might be 17, some states might be 16, and some states might even be lower with parents' consent, like as far as marriage.
But relationships with such a lopsided power dynamic do lend themselves to abuse, and that was really my kind of main concern, was that Lauren could be abusing his position and abusing his power in these relationships. So I was concerned about that, but I was like, look, that's not necessarily totally evil. Like, that just could be a kind of byproduct of the power dynamics inherent in the situation. And also that if the women are of the age of consent and they enter into a problematic relationship, a lot of people of the age of consent have of the emergence of some of the evidence against Bassnectar. It was revealed that he was having inappropriate communications with women who are purported to be under the age of consent.
And the thing is, see, this guy's coming out, this guy, Ill Gates, he's, coming out and outing Bassnectar because he was, on a lot of those tours. But the thing is that there's probably dozens, if not hundreds of people that also saw what's going on, but they're all being quiet because they all want to be down with, Bassnectar. And that goes just to show that within all these industries, whether it's electronic, hip hop, there's a lot of, really sick people out there that are that are predators and hurting other people, and they're getting away with a lot of these things because people view rappers and electronic people as rock stars and give them a pass, right? So this guy's really risking a lot of backlash from a lot of fans because a lot of Bassnectar fans still won't believe that he did all this stuff.
Sending very manipulative and flirty emails to people who are alleged to be underage. So that was where the red flags started going up for me. And then there was some audio of Lauren engaging in behavior that seemed a lot like grooming, saying some very manipulative things to someone who is obviously much younger than him, in the audio, it's impossible to tell how old that person was, but the things that he was saying were pretty textbook kind of grooming. Whether that person was of the age of consent or not, seemed pretty manipulative. So that was really where the red flags started going up. But at that point, I was still defending him, saying, hey, he hasn't done anything that's clearly abusive, and we should give him the benefit of the doubt, especially given how much good he's done in the world. But then there was an audio that was revealed where Lauren had made the effort to call in his partners in the past and to talk to them and address their emotions and be accountable. And this young woman was speaking to him, and she was asking him about a relationship that they had had when she was 17 and he was in his 30s and a famous touring rock star and such. And in that conversation, she basically asks him directly if the ages in their relationship meant that it was technically a statutory rape. And Lauren did not deny this. If the ages were not the ages where it was a statutory rape, you would think that if a person asks you, is this statutory rape? And it's not statutory rape, you would think the reply would be, no, that's not statutory rape. I would like to be accountable to you and talk about your feelings, but that was not, in fact, statutory rape. You'd think that would be how a person would respond. So but even at that point, you still got it's innocent until proven guilty. So you still got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just caught off guard. Maybe he was just, he didn't want to belabor that point or get into a conflict there. So you still got to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But when he then said that he wanted to be accountable to this woman, her name seems to be Rachel, when he said, I want to be accountable to you, but if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to get sodomized and beaten to death. Do you want that? Do you want that to happen? That was where I drew the line, because in doing that, he was essentially, again, manipulating
This is audio footage he's talking about. He's talking about an actual recording of Bassnectar saying, please don't tell anybody or he'll go to jail. So this is he's talking about actual audio.
This woman into further silence, manipulating this woman into enabling his abuse, manipulating this woman into going along with his abuse.
So this isn't hearsay. This is from actual audio, that part. A lot of other stuff, still, in litigation is hearsay, but this is actual audio he's talking about.
And that, to me, was where the line was crossed. Because that reaction is not coming from a place of accountability. It's not coming from a place of transparency. It is not coming from a place of compassion towards this woman. It is just coming from a place of self-preservation at any cost. And that, to me, is abuse. That, to me, is very clear cut abuse. So that was where I drew the line, and I found his behavior indefensible, and that was why I posted that was a clear-cut case of abuse. Now, whether it was actually illegal or not, I don't know. Whether that completely invalidates everything good that Lauren did, I don't think it does. I think that we must all concede that he did a lot of good in the world, that he made a lot of people happy, and we must all recognize that the Bassnectar project was a beautiful thing. It was a wonderful thing to be a part of. And as much as I feel the memories of it are tainted by these recent revelations, and we'll see what the final outcome of it all is. I don't regret being a participant in it. I don't condone abuse. I stand with the victims of abuse. I stand with the Me Too movement. I don't condone any of that problematic behavior because I feel electronic music has always been an escape from the kind of awful realities of humanity, and it has been a vehicle for us to connect to faith in the future, for us to really find a shared faith in the future through technology and through creativity and through the social filter and tribe building that electronic music and, really underground music.
All right. So you get the gist of what he was saying. I just wanted to play that because he's a close personal friend who, once he heard that audio of Bassnectar saying, "Please don't tell anybody," that he could get arrested, that's when he stopped trying to protect Bassnectar. Because before that, he was on the same team as all the bass heads, the Bassnectar fans that were denying the allegations. All right. Now, so let's go back to the complaint. All right. So, like many of their peers in high school, plaintiffs had an interest in electronic dance music, EDM, and were fans of Bassnectar. Plaintiffs followed Bassnectar on Twitter. Bassnectar maintained control of the Bassnectar Twitter account and used it to interact with fans. Throughout the Bassnectar Twitter account, Bassnectar found plaintiffs and contacted them through direct messages, providing his personal number and email to maintain communication. Bassnectar maintained consistent communication with plaintiffs through text, email, and secretive communication apps. In an effort to groom plaintiffs, Bassnectar asked them about personal details of the plaintiffs' lives and provided advice, including encouraging them to watch American Beauty. Now, for those who don't know what American Beauty is, it's a movie about an older man having a relationship with a younger girl, right? And who is that starring? I'm going to type that in. I know the name, but I'm going to type it in. So I'm going to type American Beauty. Right, so American Beauty, and 1999 came out, and who's it starring? Who's the star? Look, they don't even have the star. They don't even have his name up because of all his allegations. But you can see, yeah, Kevin Spacey's the star, and we all know. I'm gonna type Kevin Spacey allegations. Right, and you say in December 2018, Spacey was charged with a felony for allegedly sexually assaulting journalist Heather Unruh's 18-year-old son in Nantucket, Massachusetts in July 2016. Spacey pleaded not guilty to the charge on January 7th. And from what I heard 2 days ago, Kevin Spacey set to evade $40 million sexual assault suit unless accuser reveals identity. And also the other people that were accusers, they all died. Like somebody got hit by a car or a train, or I'm gonna type Kevin Spacey accuser dies. Look, Kevin Spacey accuser dies by suicide. Right? And I think another one, more than died. So 3 have died. Where are Kevin Spacey's accusers now? So this is distractify.com. Kevin Spacey says, kill them with kindness, and another one of his accuser dies. It's become a bizarre holiday tradition for Kevin Spacey to share a terrifying video on Christmas Eve in the voice of his former House of Cards character, Frank Underwood. For the second year in a row, Spacey posted a video wishing his fans a Merry Christmas, but with an underlying message. It says, kill them with This year's message, kill them with kindness, which is rather unfortunate timing considering that now 3 of his accusers have died. So that's just a little side note that we can see that Bassnectar was actually a fan of Kevin Spacey and the movie, right? So it's just deep how rampant all this kind of stuff is within the entertainment industry, right? When people can be out with all this stuff, right? So Bassnectar referenced American Beauty at his shows too. He used the visual of the scene with the actress laying in rose petals and had rose petals fall from the sky at one of his New Year's Eve shows. So he literally was referencing American Beauty while he was literally grooming and trafficking women. This is crazy. I haven't read through this whole thing. This is my first time reading through the whole complaint. And for those that don't know about the legal terminology, what a complaint is once you file a notice of claim and summons, then you can file a complaint, which is basically, or you can do a notice of claim with complaint. And a complaint is just different points about what you're charging the person with, what the allegations are, and then the other team will do an answer, and they have to answer each one of these points. They'll have to say, oh, point number 38. Well, that's true. Okay, point number 39. That's not true because of this, or whatever. They have to answer. The lawyer, Bassnectar's legal team is going to have to answer all these different things. So let's go through this. So it says, nevertheless, Bassnectar. 38. Through these communications, Bassnectar had personal knowledge that both plaintiffs were underage. Nevertheless, Bassnectar supplied tickets and travel arrangements for plaintiffs to attend his performances. Plaintiffs were subsequently invited to his hotel room where Bassnectar had sex with them, which Bassnectar mandated be without the use of a condom. In exchange for these sexual encounters, Bassnectar gave plaintiffs cash in amounts ranging from $300 to $1,600. Bassnectar maintained tight control over the plaintiffs, requiring them to follow certain rules, including keeping the relationship secret. This included avoiding being seen in public together, which is very shady, right? If somebody's not going to be seen in public, then usually they're hiding something. Not allowing the plaintiffs to leave hotel rooms or answer the phone in Bassnectar's hotel room. Okay, so that's when he gets into trafficking stuff, where it's like you got to stay in the room and be quiet. Demand that any sexual intercourse be unprotected without the use of a condom. Demanding that the plaintiffs shower before Bassnectar had unprotected sex with them so that they were clean. Requiring plaintiffs to take sexually explicit photographs of themselves and send them to Bassnectar. Plaintiffs were not allowed to have sex with anyone else, but Bassnectar could have sex with other women. So at the heart of this action is Bassnectar's use of the Bassnectar companies to facilitate and enable the sex trafficking of underage girls in the United States. The Bassnectar companies fund and support Bassnectar's illegal sex trafficking venture and Bassnectar's use of the Bassnectar company's brands, resources, and promotional events to recruit, lure, entice, and/or groom victims and force or coerce them, or knowing that the victim has not attained the age of 18 years into engaging in commercial sex acts. In turn, the Bassnectar companies knowingly benefit from their participation in Bassnectar's venture by the continued promotion of the Bassnectar brand. Bassnectar, using the Bassnectar company's resources, engaged in a pattern and practicing of recruiting, luring, enticing, obtaining, and grooming underage girls and causing them through force, fraud, or coercion, or knowing that the victim had not yet attained the age of 18 years, to engage in commercial sex acts through, among other means, providing cash payments and other commercially lucrative benefits such as transportation and concert event tickets, or getting in free, or getting their friends in free, probably. The Bassnectar companies have actual knowledge of Bassnectar's unlawful commercial sex acts through him, as he is the founder of the Bassnectar companies and intimately involved in their day-to-day operations. Further, the Bassnectar companies knowingly aided and abetted, facilitated, and participated in Bassnectar's illegal sex trafficking venture by being integrally involved in the recruitment of the underage victims and the logistical steps necessary for Bassnectar to recruit, lure, entice, obtain, and groom the underage victims. Bassnectar intentionally used the Bassnectar company's resources to recruit, lure, and entice children to cause them to engage in commercial sex acts and other degrading acts for which he always provided Bassnectar companies resources as a value. Further, the Bassnectar companies knowingly financed Bassnectar's commercial sex acts. Bassnectar's conduct, as outlined above, violates the TVPA and TVPRA, which outlaws using means of interstate or foreign commerce to recruit, entice, obtain, or lure a person and force or coerce that person, or knowing that the person had not attained the age of 18 years to engage in commercial sex acts. The Bassnectar companies are guilty of aiding and abetting Bassnectar's violations of the TVPA and TVPRA by knowingly facilitating and enabling his illegal conduct. So they're saying basically that all these companies, they're not just suing Bassnectar, they're suing him and the companies because they're saying that the companies were a part of all this because they were kind of fronts for him to be able to like kind of recruit teens and stuff. All right, so the Bassnectar companies also directly violated the TVPA because they knowingly benefited from participating in Ashton's venture with knowledge or in reckless disregard of the fact that Bassnectar used means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion to force children and women into engaging in commercial sex acts. In June 2020, an Instagram account was created titled Evidence Against Bassnectar, and we'll go to that. All right, so we're going to go to Twitter. I'm going to type Twitter. All right, and then it's called Evidence Against Bassnectar. So let's go to that, Evidence Against Bassnectar. Oh, doesn't exist. So let me look for it. It might be on Twitter. I mean on Instagram. Let's see. I'm gonna type Evidence Against Bassnectar. All right, so Evidence Against Bassnectar. There's an actual page. Let's see, Evidence Against Bassnectar. Let me see. Instagram. So yeah, it's not Twitter. So this complaint actually has. It does say Instagram. I thought it was Twitter. I just saw the ad. I thought it was Twitter. I didn't see Instagram. So this is the Instagram, and it says Evidence Against Bassnectar, and new things are coming out every day. Right. So this is April 23rd. Bassnectar and grappling with allegations against favorite artists. Is it possible to separate art from its problematic artists? It's a debate that's been at the heart of the Me Too movement since it took off in 2017. It's a question that was asked in the wake of revelations about Michael Jackson, about Louis C.K., about R. Kelly, and many more. What's interesting about this, I'm actually about to meet up my wife's homegirl, or Nike, actually started the whole R. Kelly movement, new R. Kelly movement. And so we're actually about to go to a banquet she's having. But I just find that interesting because I'm actually doing that today. All right, so now it's a question that fans of EDM star Bassnectar or Lauren Ashkin are asking themselves. Allegations against Action, which the artist has denied, has left fans to grapple with those accusations. Right, and there's a million of these things. So Las Vegas shop offers free Bassnectar tattoo removals. Right, that's deep. Free tattoo removals because there's a lot of Bassnectar fans that have tattoos. And who wants to have a serial R word apist person on their arm, you know? The popular EDM star was sued this week by Rachel Ramsbottom and Alexis. And Rachel, I guess, is the person that that guy Il Gates was talking about, you know, in his video about the allegations. So, but maybe it was another one, but you know. All right, so Rachel Ramsbottom and Alexis Bowling, who claimed the musician was well aware that they were underage when he slept with them. All right, so now the fall of the Bassnectar empire. Vice, according to women and former collaborators who spoke to Vice in a new lawsuit, the EDM star abused his fame and power to build a complex web of secret and manipulative relationships. All right. EDM star Bassnectar accused of using fame and companies to sexually abuse minors he paid for to produce child P-word. All right, so all this stuff is, you know, it's a lot of you know, these are serious allegations like interstate trafficking and all that stuff. Like that's, you know, big federal offense. You know, that's years, you know, beyond you know the statutory stuff. You know, so this is a lot of charges that are up against him. Now, lawsuit filed against Bassnectar for human trafficking and sexual abuse. I'm just trying to say that word too much for the algorithms. All right, and this is Billboard. Billboard says the Association for Electronic Music releases code of conduct against sexual harassment in the dance scene. All right, so the Association for Electronic Music Resource Code. So we're gonna have to see about that that organization. I haven't heard of them. That's interesting. All right, so let's see. Evidence against the Bassnectar. Let's see. So this is a video. All right, can't thank Trip and this team behind the Block Party live stream that happened tonight enough for standing up for what's right and supporting the victims with the scrolling disclaimer. This is a restream of a set that includes a song from Bassnectar pre-allegations. We no longer support Bassnectar and stand with the victims. All right. So let's see. So Bassnectar, all profits from the Bassnectar purchase of Bassnectar goods will be donated to the Interactive Giving Fund. All right. So I guess they're gonna be doing that. I guess Charles Manson. I believe his money from like all his Beach Boy albums and all that stuff. Or I guess maybe he only did one Beach Boy record, but his Beach Boy money and his own money from his own albums, I believe, are being sent to some of the victims' families. I think. All right. So evidence against Bassnectar interview. Right. So that's a whole interview. Um, so the fans' strong sense of identity felt by fans made at evidence against Bassnectar was hard to digest to fans. It was more than just going to a concert for a good time. It also felt like being of service to some greater good. It's sad that the greater good was actually a mask to veil reprehensible behavior. In an interview, we talked to the founder of Evidence Against Bassnectar about healthy fan-artist relationships and how our community can move forward. All right, so this Evidence Against Bassnectar, space Jesus interview. So let me type Evidence Against Bassnectar interview. All right, so I'm clicking on this. All right, so this is the actual interview. Right, I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but you can find this. You can go up to this, but I'll read through some of it. So let me make this a little bit smaller so I can read it faster. So trigger warning. So let's see. Now I'm going to get to where the interview starts. I mean, I guess the interview might be on video, but let me get back to where we were because this pretty much has a lot of the information in this actual site. So it says, hi, I just like to say victims are still reaching out to me about Bassnectar. People are still coming forward. So these are new victims, right? I understand what happened in the past has been traumatic, so don't feel pressured to speak on the subject. But if you're ready, you can contact at Mimi Page Music, and I are willing to talk. All right. We're big fans of second chances. Let's see. Selling brand new fall 2020 merchandise with the Bassnectar logo and running ads. We're big fans of second chances. What exactly is this supposed to mean or endorse? What's going on here? Right? And you see his fans are like, yeah, you a-holes, forgiveness, F you, all this Bassnectar's getting run down on. So there's a lot of Bassnectar fans that are still hardcore. They don't believe it. This is so let's see. So let's skip that. Now, so these are conferences, the people involved and all that stuff. To steal or not to steal has appropriation, we're in creativity. They're just talking about Bassnectar and appropriating and whatnot. And I was talking about that earlier as far as appropriation in EDM music. All right, but yeah, you can find out a lot of stuff. So Lauren really looked me dead in the eye and said the sexual assault allegations against him came from a far-right political group that started targeting him after he debuted the anti-KKK visuals. He went as far as saying that they had written him a letter officially threatened to ruin his career reputation if he continued his political agenda. He told me he had extensive teams of lawyers and security to protect him for this purpose alone, and that he shouldn't be telling me at all. Another gross thing, he brought up that his last official job was dressing as Barney for 2 to 3-year-old birthday parties, and that he thought it was something. So I'm not sure what it says down there at the bottom of that. Oh, maybe it continues. He brought up his last official job was dressing as Barney for 2 to 3-year-old birthday parties, and that he thought it was neat that those kids could now be attending his shows. Meanwhile, he was actually sleeping with them. He went as far as saying that they had written him. Oh no, okay, yeah, I already read that. All right. And this is actually from Bassnectar. My last real job before Bassnectar was dressing up as Barney the Purple Dinosaur at birthday parties. I also did Big Bird and Winnie the Pooh. So it says, the train was so different when I was starting. Ashton says, the definition of a DJ was changing. I was I was in college training to be a guidance counselor or possible high school teacher, and I began throwing freewaves out in the woods and in warehouses. The 36-year-old Bay Area bred producer performers has spent 14 years engineering his deadly blend of heavy dubstep, breakbeat, glitch, and hip hop. Like I was saying before, this is all subsets of hip hop as far as dubstep. Even breakbeat, all that stuff, this is all hip hop stuff. Glitch, because you could say turntablism started glitch. What came first, IDM or turntablism? Who started glitching out the beats first? You can say turntablist. You can say Steve D what started breakcore. It's like, who invented breakcore? Steve D or Jungle People? Steve D was doing breakcore before anybody, right? Because Steve D, the funk, that is breakcore, breaking up beats and stuff like that, you know. And now there's nobody who sounds quite like him. On June 24th, he unleashes his 10th studio album. This is from another article, Good Times. I always thought I was going to end up a high school teacher or guidance counselor, right? He keeps focusing on high school, right, and kids. Ashton says in an effort to fulfill this interest, he has been working on a wiki where anyone interested can go to find nonpartisan, only the facts information on topics such as sex, drugs, suicide, even how to make friends. Anything from the most serious to the most basic of questions. It's something he wishes he had as a teenager. So that makes us even more heinous, like with the Bambaataa thing, where not only is he grooming and targeting teens, underage teens, he's actually got an organization that's supposed to be helping teens. So that's even, takes it even worse levels, right? Beyond working towards his online database and crafting new music, Ashton doesn't really have much of a plan other than doing what he does best. I really couldn't ask for more, he says. I'm just totally grateful. Ashton has his teaching degree and would definitely be putting it to good if he wasn't making music. I think either a high school history teacher or a guidance counselor, or I would love to do preschool or kindergarten. I got my teacher's degree when I graduated, was busy with a minor in education, minor in electronic music, and a major in community studies, and just wanted to work with music and social change and inspire, protect, guide people who needed friendship and support. I'd also love to write novels, like stories or something. All right, oops, let me go back to where I was. All right. So let me go back to where I was. So let's go back. Let's get out of there. Let's see. Let me go back to evidence against Bassnectar. So we were farther down here. So that you can see, as y'all see, there's a lot of evidence against Bassnectar, right? So we were just up here somewhere, right? We were kind of back here. So I'm going to go back to where we were because I want to kind of get through all these. This is going to be a very, very extensive investigation because we're draining the swamp in hip hop and turntablism, DJing in general. All right. So let me just keep going. All right. In light of recent events, I will be donating. Let's see. Now let me skip all that. Keep going that. All right. So let's keep going. Let's keep skipping through this. My name is Laura, and I was a Bassnectar ambassador for 2013 to 2015. I distanced myself from the scene because of some behavior. Just before they started to let people into the stadium at the Bloomington event, I noticed Bassnectar's ambassador coordinator, a woman, taking two girls to the side, complimenting their outfits casually, asking how old they were. One responded 20, while the other said 18. B questioned the younger one, really? The girl shyly shook her head and laughed, indicating that she was even younger. B then asked them if they wanted to go backstage after the show for a more intimate experience, which they enthusiastically agreed to. I remember feeling that something felt off about that interaction, but brushed it off as possibly being as her possibly being jealous that I didn't get selected to meet him. After I got home, I couldn't get Bassnectar's questioning to those girls out of my head. It really rubbed me the wrong way because I felt like Bassnectar was specifically targeting women that appeared to be underage, I guess. Let's see, specifically that appeared to be underage or vulnerable. That's when I decided to take a step back from the scene and really reevaluate. Interestingly, Bassnectar went on to be a tour manager. This is another person. B went on to be a tour manager, personal assistant for both Dat-Sick and Space Jesus during the infamous Ninja Nation tour. And as another side note, like we had the Kevin Spacey side note, now we're going to go to the Dat-Sick thing. So let me close this public enemy, close this bingo quitting because I'm being boxed out of the game. But let me see, Dat-Sick. If you type Dat-Sick and the R word see, Datsik accused of R-word multiple women, all right, and he offers a half-assed excuse. So even Datsik was dealing with that. So you can see that these are patterns. You know, this isn't just like, you know, one person's doing it. As far as all these guys, you know, we can see that, you know, they're friends with each other, they're working together. They're even citing each other. Like he was literally citing. Bassnectar was literally citing Kevin Spacey at a show, but we can see the relationship between Datsik and Bassnectar and all these people, you know, because all these people, you know, they run trains together and all types of stuff. All right, so let's go back to where we were, back to Instagram. So for both Datsik and Space Jesus during the infamous Ninja Nation tour, we know what happened there. We see you, B. I find it interesting that Bassnectar shows have continued to be all ages over the years. No one seemed to question if it was appropriate for minors to attend. Lauren argues that all ages events promote inclusivity, and the ferocity with which fans defend this scares me. I left the ambassador program in late 2015. Right. As someone who was subject to the same professional abuse and manipulation, this is the guy that I played the video of. Uncredited use of my music, denial of royalties, unfulfilled promises of opening slots, collab, EPs, blog, podcasts, etc. Jordana's story is all too familiar. Please take a minute to read and share. All right, so I'm going to take a sip of water first. All right, so he took an intro I made with him from another collab and made it into the intro for Take You Down. Zero credit, zero royalties. When I was talking to him last summer about how frustrating it was for him to cancel my album at the last minute, he actually said to me, you'll take whatever I give you and you'll like it. He's not all bad, but he certainly can be a real dick sometimes. So my project for Be Interactive in my hometown last summer was about trans healthcare and resources supporting trans rights and trans women of color. Was it all just a effing joke to him? And then Ill Gates replies, I think he genuinely believed what he did was okay, like it was all for the greater good, and his greatness excused all of his transgressions. Like the trickle-down indirect benefits of his fame outweighed the direct abuse he handed down to lesser artists. I mean, we all heard that phone call in his mind. So this is the phone call where he was telling a girl he didn't want to go to jail. So we all heard that phone call. In his mind, it's all excusable, and he's the victim. So the girls at the public time should just shut up in public and yield to his manipulation in private like they used to. This is what Bassnectar said in the phone call. Do you want to send me to prison? F that. F that shit. Indefensible. And so he says, I was giving Lauren a chance to step up and try to make things right. He's clearly just running away with his millions and trying to avoid prison at this point. I might write it up someday, but it's all pretty painful right now. I also have other life and dad shit to handle. The reason Bassnectar uses Ableton for his live performances now is because Ill Gates spent about a month working with him to make an Ableton DJ template that works for him. According to Lauren, Ill Gates is an Ableton genius. Ill Gates has published his public performance template, and you can buy it for $40. Because of that, there's some videos on how the template works, and that gives some insight into how things work. Basically, Lauren has a bunch of tracks organized already into his sets of 4 things he can trigger. That might be loops or full tracks from a cue point, or just cue points. Some details on the Ill Gates intro, blah blah blah. So yeah, they were homies. All right. An open apology to the cause. All right. So an opening apology to the cause and Seth Drake. We would be remiss if we didn't live the way we hope others would and admit we were wrong and hurt someone. After some time and research, we have come to realize that Seth Drake on this page was wrong. The information we shared about him was misleading and hurtful. The way it was portrayed within the greater narrative not only caused irreparable harm to him, but also to the veracity of others coming forward with their stories about Bassnectar. We mischaracterized what he did when really he was an example to us all. He stood up years ago and admitted publicly to making his girlfriend feel uncomfortable. He did it so without question, and he did it so on his accord. He took accountability, admitting to what happened, and asked for forgiveness. All right, so let's just keep moving on. So there's just a lot of stuff going on here. My story probably portrays Bassnectar as a F-boy at best, but it's still important for others to know about the personality traits that he kept hidden from his community at large. I try to be as detailed as possible because I think that can help verify to the validity of other accusers' stories as well. I was an adult. This was consensual for me, but that doesn't mean that it was ethical for him as a famous man in a position and power. I might be making more little edits from time to time, but I'm not going to change the story. Um, so this is a story. So let's see what this is about. I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna go to another link. All right. So let me click on that. So um, so I didn't realize I kept breaking. Let's see. So I guess this is the story. All right. So let me scroll down a little bit. Succinctly, I was 22. This was consensual for me. I was a groupie who knowingly emotionally cheated on my then boyfriend with Bassnectar for months. I broke it off and moved out because I expected more from the relationship than I ever got. As one person on IG stated, I was just a groupie whose fantasy didn't go the way I wanted to. Laugh aloud, it's true, but that isn't the whole story. I know it's easy to focus on how I was old enough to know better and the harmful choices that I made, but don't forget that Bassnectar actively pursued me even after finding out about my boyfriend. He offered me concert tickets, plane tickets, money to buy apartments. He told me to email him as often as possible. He told me to keep everything a secret and to lie to my boyfriend over and over. Um, he tried to save me with controlling advice about eating, sleeping, not partying. Ironic, considering that he's a DJ, not pursuing music journalism, not hanging out with any male friends whatsoever where I should work. This was all before we ever met in person. People don't realize how hard it is to say no to your idols, especially when they are constantly offering gifts that I consider very extravagant at my age. This wasn't a normal affair. I had absolutely nothing to offer Bassnectar but myself, yet he spoke to me like he was a star. He told me we could go deep and he wanted to mate with me. Of course, my dumbass young adult drug addled mind is going to fall in love with the idea of him. Consent is not definitive. I didn't consent to a relationship as two normal people sneaking around. I became a cheating asshole who was misled by a rich and famous liar. I never said what I did was right. In fact, I made it very clear that I did something wrong too. I also said that my story is not as bad as the other stories. I absolutely do not think that I had it worse than anyone else. I think that my story is important because it shows that his behavior wasn't limited to underage people. Hopefully my candor denotes honesty, and by admitting my faults in this situation, people can see that Bassnectar's emotional manipulation was real and calculated, and most certainly did not start or end with me. Um, let's see. So apparently Bassnectar does cuddle. I guess he just doesn't cuddle with me that night. Ouch. Too many typos to fix. So just because I say I'm slutty and I like sluts doesn't mean every woman who was involved with Bassnectar is a slut. I'm just owning that label to change my narrative for myself. I really don't think there's anything wrong with being slutty. It's just always the rest of the world that has that problem. I wrote this stream of consciousness, so I wanted to mention that sometimes my statements that involve other women may seem brusque, but I'm not on the other women's side. I mean to convey. All right, so I'm not going to read all this, but we can see that she's just showing that the pattern extends to just even people he was secretly dating, right? Telling them to have to follow all these rules, kind of grooming. All right. So long thread, my Bassnectar story and how it affected me. Please, RT, share it on other networks. Despite being a legend, I don't have a lot of followers here on Facebook. My adore with Lauren is yet another reason why you haven't seen releases or me at events. All right. So this is Flux Pavilion, a group. It's funny because that Flux Pavilion group, me and my homie Tess were about to rap on that beat, and then Jay-Z and Kanye rapped on that to make N-words in Paris, that when they rapped over that dubstep beat. Okay, so had a few tweets following the fall of Bassnectar that I should step into in his shoes as the bass music ringleader. To that I say F no. It's that type of idealization that gives these artists illusions of grandeur and end up feeling free to do whatever they like. I am and will always be your peer on a human level. We are in this together. Artists don't belong on pedestals. On occasion, their work certainly does, but the human is just another bumbling creature trying to work out what the F is going on? Don't give these assholes power. So, that's just showing, uh, you know, how powerful he was. He was an idol to people. I'd like to share some of my experiences with Lauren Ashton over the past 4 years in light of meeting two other females who have been in contact with him over the same time frame and sharing their stories. I've had another woman come forward to me, so that makes four of us. This is so incredibly deep and heartbreaking. These stories I'm hearing, this is horrible. He is horrible, and all things that you're hearing are true. It's not my story to tell, but I'll share my own experiences shortly. So here's my story. Let's see if they have the actual story. So um, I'm calling out this man on Lauren's staff. His name is Brandon. He let me backstage to meet Lauren. The first time we hung out, he rolled his eyes at me, and I just knew I probably wasn't the first girl he's seen go hang out with him. I checked his Instagram, and he's been on tour. All right, so let's see. Let's see if we can find this actual status right here. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna bring it up. All right, so let's see. So here's the actual thing. So it says Lauren reaches out to me via Twitter DM 3 to 4 years and asks me some simple nonchalant questions about video games. From there, he asked for my phone number and called me from a block number, and we'd speak once a week on the phone and text a lot. The stories of making women feel special are true. He did it with me, sending me snips of unreleased songs or asking me what he should play at the set. He tried to get me not to move to Denver and instead move to San Francisco. He said I'd get addicted to drugs and partying here. He made me feel special, like it was a privilege to have his fatherly advice. I met him at a hotel in Brooklyn where he asked to cuddle, and I declined, and that's as far as it went. He'd call me exotic, sexy, beautiful, and unique all the time. He tried to get me to go to a hotel with him at Bassnectar 2018. He asked if I was alone and didn't want anyone to know about it. That freaked me out, and I declined. That seemed to make him feel mad, and he stopped replying. I was fully aware of the power imbalance he had on me, and I never engaged sexually with him because of that. I asked him why did he even talk to me? I'm just some random girl, and how many other girls did he talk to? He replied with, would that make you jealous? He reached out to all of he reached out to all of this before the allegations came out, and he said, or I guess all of us, before the allegations came out, and he said he loved me. He loved making women feel special, or he loved making women feel special are true. He did it with me, sending me snips of unreleased songs or asking me what he should play at the set. He tried to get me not. Oh, I already read this part. Let's see. He made me feel. Let me skip over that. He tried to get me to go to a hotel. Let's see. I already read that. Power imbalance. All right. So let's see. All right. So yeah. So that's basically that. All right. So let's go back to the Twitter thing. All right. So so this is the guy on the staff. So let's go to the next one. So this is just, it's just nonstop. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So I've been closely watching the situation unfold the past few days, like so many of you, as a collaborator. So this is on July 5th last year. Of Lauren as a collaborator of, this is Mimi Page, as a collaborator of Lauren for 8 years. I'm horrified by the allegations and evidence brought forward. As a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, both as a preschooler and in my teenage years, I have been deeply triggered. Will be to RAIN and other nonprofits that support the justice of healing female, male, and trans survivors of sexual abuse. My hope is that if you choose to continue listening to my collaborations or accidentally hear them and get triggered, you will know that I am trying to create a bit of good from the wreckage of this situation. All right. So Bassnectar stepping back from music after sexual misconduct allegations surfaced. The rumors you are hearing are untrue. This is what Bassnectar is saying. The rumors you are hearing are untrue, but I realize some of my past actions have caused pain, and I'm deeply sorry, the EDM star says. All right. This is a call for Bassnectar's actual accountability, right? So my name is Lauren. This person's coming out. My name is Lauren, and I became a fan of Bassnectar at 17. My friend in high school had died tragically, and she'd been a huge fan. Lauren wrote her friend group, including myself, a deeply touching letter that inspired my teenage devotion. The scene provided me a sense of community, and I traveled far and wide to go to shows. I was 21 when I met Lauren. I'm 26 now. I have a successful career and have nothing to gain from entering this firestorm. My only interest is the truth. Why I'm coming forward. As I read each of the accounts made by anonymous women affected by Lauren's behavior over the years, I find myself relating deeply to each and every one. Given the doubt around the anonymous allegations against Bassnectar, I feel called to come forward and share my experiences with him. To be clear, my statement is not an accusation of statutory rape. Rather, I hope to lend legitimacy to the fact that Lauren used his position of power to commit psychological abuse, controlling, grooming, isolating behavior. We read her stuff already. All right. Oops. Let's see. So Lauren admits underage intercourse and potentially trafficking. More submitted audio from victims from 7/3/2020 who had enough. This clip contains Lauren admitting to being in an underage relationship as far as being in a child trafficking situation. The situation described in the beginning of the phone call is the victim Rachel he went on to groom and to sleep with. We have the exact date this happened via Twitter interaction, matching dates and times, and can provide at will. The full 5-minute convo has now been uploaded to YouTube. So let's just listen to this at first. So for those that are just coming in, this is we're draining the DJ swamp, the turntablist swamp, because Bassnectar does scratch some. Most dubstep DJs scratch. This is the allegations of trafficking and statutory rape and things like that with Bassnectar. So I'm going to press play.
It was before there was Uber, and she says, "Please help me. I didn't even I know her." And she tweeted it, and she's like, "Please help me. I'm at a frat party. My friend is with a frat company. I'm out on the porch all alone in Arkansas. I don't even live in this state." And I was like, "What's your number?" And she called me, and we got on the phone, and she was so innocent and just this random human. There was no Uber, so I called Arkansas taxi companies in the middle of the night. I prepaid on my credit card to get her a taxi. They took her from Arkansas, took her sued for that. Not sued. I could go to jail for child trafficking because she was 17. There's so many little fucked up things.
So y'all heard that?
I could go to jail for child trafficking because she was 17. There's so many little fucked up things. No. There is someone who told me that they were 21, and they turned out to be 17, and we did hook up, and she told me years later, and I just talked to her yesterday, and she made me sob because she was so kind to me, and she "I will never tell anyone, you were always so kind to me." Hearing someone say the truth just was oh God, but I also felt scared because I'm just fuck, it felt good to be loved by someone, but also she could screw me up too. She could decide she's mad at me too. Anyone could fuck me, and I'd never do anything wrong. I would never.
So boom, there it is, right there. That's him admitting to it. So we have the actual tape of him actually admitting to it. And really that's what I was trying to find. I don't have to go through all these millions of things. A lot of these things are kind of repeats of similar stuff. So now let's just finish up the complaint and then we'll be done with this. So let's see. So plaintiff Rachel, let's see, how much do we have over? We're only halfway. So plaintiff Rachel Ramsbottom became a fan of Bassnectar in high school and followed him on the Bassnectar Twitter account in September 2012. After tweeting about a Bassnectar show cancellation, Rachel was contacted by the defendant Bassnectar through a private message on Twitter. Bassnectar informed Rachel that he would be playing in a show in Nashville in her home state of Tennessee. The first Bassnectar show Rachel went to was his New Year's Eve show in Nashville in 2012. Bassnectar knew Rachel was underage at the time, but had wanted to see Rachel the next day regardless. Rachel did not meet with him because she was with her brother at the time. However, Bassnectar provided his phone number and email address and maintained communication with Rachel every day or every other day from the end of September 2012 until May 2013. During this time, Bassnectar was aware that Rachel was a minor and in high school. Bassnectar would read Rachel's school assignments and even ask her to write one for him. Bassnectar said that the paper he wanted Rachel to write him would take about 4 to 5 hours. Bassnectar manipulated Rachel and gained the trust of Rachel by presenting himself as a friend and a mentor, discussing school and offering his advice. Yet his communications had sexual undertones, grooming Rachel from what would later become Bassnectar, sexually abusing and exploiting Rachel while she was still a child under the age of 18. Examples include, but are not limited to, asking what she would want to do if they met, telling her that every guy wants to have the S word with her, directing Rachel to break up with her high school boyfriend at the time, which she did, telling Rachel her last name blows him away and was really sexy, asking about her social life, and having Rachel engage in phone sex with him. In May 2013, Bassnectar was in Memphis performing at the Beale Street Music Festival. On or about May 3rd, 2013, Rachel met Bassnectar at the Marriott Hotel in Memphis. So, they probably have, all these things are probably, there's probably documentations of a lot of these things, especially like the phone stuff, because they've been recording, not just the NSA, but, they got all that stuff, all the phone recordings. So instead of meeting in the lobby as originally planned, Bassnectar directed Rachel to meet him in the elevator. When she did, Bassnectar did not say a word to Rachel. Instead, Bassnectar took Rachel to his hotel room and had the sex with her. Bassnectar refused to wear a condom and never asked if Rachel was on birth control. Bassnectar provided Rachel with $1,000 in mixed bills after he had sex with her. Approximately several weeks later, Bassnectar wanted to celebrate Rachel's birthday in Nashville and invited Rachel to stay with him at Lowe's Hotel. Bassnectar kept Rachel in the hotel room for approximately 4 days. During this time, Bassnectar required Rachel to hide. This is where it comes into the trafficking stuff. Hide when room service arrived, and became angry when Rachel answered the phone. In addition to the sexual abuse described herein, Bassnectar was very controlling of Rachel, including but not limited to advising Rachel of the friends she would have, telling Rachel she could not pursue modeling, and directing her choice of major in college, and pressuring Rachel to change her last name, of no one would ever take her seriously. Further, Rachel was required to follow Bassnectar's rule. She was not allowed to have sex with anyone else, but he could have sex with her with whomever he wanted, and unprotected sex with Rachel whenever he wanted. On numerous occasions, when Rachel was a minor, Bassnectar solicited Rachel to take and send sexually explicit photographs of herself while naked. Rachel complied. As such, Bassnectar engaged in the manufacture and possession of child word on numerous occasions. November 2013 was the last time Bassnectar and Rachel saw each other in person. After the Me Too movement began in 2016, Bassnectar reached out to Rachel, checking in with her often and yelling and telling her, I love you. So I'm gonna wrap it up like that. This is part one of this. I'll do another part two. I gotta get rolling. So yeah, that wraps up this lecture. And I'll be doing part two at another time. All right. So we've ascertained that Bassnectar was clearly exploiting young women of different ages, and he even admitted it on the phone. All right.
So I'm gonna read fast through this so we can so I can hopefully, and you see I got the new setup here. Got this slim the thin Mac laptop hooked up to this like 4K screen. So this is the first time I've actually been editing in 4K on a 4K screen. Before I was looking at a little small screen. But so here we go. So yeah, Bassnectar engaged in the manufacture and possession of child pornography on numerous occasions. November 2013 was the last time Bassnectar and Rachel saw each other in person. After the Me Too movement began in 2016, Bassnectar reached out to Rachel, checking in with her often and telling her, I love you. In 2019, shortly after Rachel had started therapy as a result of what Bassnectar did to her, she decided to tell Bassnectar for the first time that she was suffering as a result of what he did to her when she was a minor. Bassnectar, you know what? I'm gonna put this. I got this stand, so I don't have to hold this with my hand. I'm holding this with my hand, so I'm gonna attach this. I'm gonna stop for a second and attach this to this thing, so I can just kind of hold it at the screen, so it's not like I gotta actually hold this thing. All right, so let me see. There we go. So this should, let me fix this. All right. There we go. So we're almost there. All right, so let's see. See if this works. Let's move that back. All right, let's move this over here. Let's see if this, no, I'm gonna have to hold it, but whatever, because the angle's not right. It's got to be too. Actually, no, I can do it right here. I'm gonna flip the angle right over here. Probably. Let's see. No, it's not. It's not holding. So I'm just gonna read it. All right. So where were we? All right. So let's move up here. Yeah. So there we go. All right. So, Bassnectar attempted to justify his behavior again using manipulation tactics. Bassnectar offered to pay for Rachel's therapy or fly out for a therapy session with Rachel. After being publicly exposed in June 2020, Bassnectar began incessantly reaching out to Rachel. When she blocked his number, he continued to attempt to initiate contact via the messaging app WhatsApp. Bassnectar also emailed Rachel before his last attempt to contact her on WhatsApp. Eventually, Rachel agreed to have a phone conversation with him. So for the people that don't know, the first half of this lecture was like 3 months ago. And it was basically, I didn't finish the whole complaint, so I'm just wrapping it up. So Bassnectar, has been caught trafficking children across state lines. He had a whole fan club that was a front for him getting with underage kids. All types of crazy stuff, pictures, everything, but nobody's talking about it. You don't see nobody talking, I haven't seen any stuff about it. All I see is black male artists, in the media as far as, all this type of stuff. So let's see. Eventually, Rachel agreed to have a phone conversation with him. Bassnectar and Rachel spoke on June 3rd, 2020. During the phone conversation, Rachel confronted Bassnectar about the fact that she was taken advantage of, trafficked, and what happened between them was statutory rape. In response, Bassnectar admitted his abuse of Rachel was so inappropriate and that what he did was completely wrong. Bassnectar admitted that he engaged with multiple women who were too young and acknowledged that, in his own words, there was an imbalance of power due to his age, the fan-celebrity dynamic, his male privilege, and his celebrity privilege. During the call, Bassnectar confessed that he abused his power, stating that you weren't complicit, going so far as to apologize to Rachel for exploiting you and taking advantage of you when you were so impressionable. Ironically, Bassnectar repeatedly stated that he wanted to take accountability and make an example of myself, yet blamed Rachel for his inability to do so. I could be doing so much more if it wasn't for one person who could push a button and put me in fucking jail. Importantly, Bassnectar admitted his conduct was illegal and referenced his risk of going to jail numerous times throughout the conversation. If you think it's worth me living forever in a Tennessee jail, to be raped or beat to death, do you think I deserve to be in jail in Tennessee? The one thing that gets in his way is if I have to go. The one thing that gets in the way is if I have to go to a Tennessee jail for life. Do you understand me taking accountability over the phone with you right now is colored by the fact that me talking to you can result in a Tennessee jail that is not a 6-month sentence. There's only one person who has the potential to take me from being really sorry to being raped in the Tennessee jail. So he's just clearly admitting that he was totally guilty and scared that he was guilty. So during the phone conversation, Bassnectar repeatedly offered Rachel money and other benefits in an attempt to coerce her into remaining silent. Rachel has suffered substantial physical and psychological injuries and emotional distress as a result of being sexually abused, exploited, and trafficked. Plaintiff Alexis Bowling. So there's multiple plaintiffs, there's a lot of people, but these are just the ones that came together and made an actual complaint. Alexis was a fan of Bassnectar. I think this is a federal complaint, but maybe not. Maybe it's just with the state of Tennessee, or maybe it's a federal thing within Tennessee. Alexis was a fan of Bassnectar in high school and tweeted to Bassnectar on or around her 17th birthday. Bassnectar contacted Alexis through a direct message wishing her happy birthday throughout her senior year. Bassnectar, through the Bassnectar Twitter account, would reply to her tweets. Around April 2014, Bassnectar provided Alexis with his personal email and contacted her via email offering her tickets to his Las Vegas show. Alexis drove to Las Vegas but was not permitted in the venue because she was under the age of 18. Alexis reached out to Bassnectar to see if there was anything he could do, but he could not help her. Instead, Bassnectar directed her and arranged for her to meet him near his hotel. Bassnectar met Alexis near his hotel, where he took her into the bushes and hid for approximately 6 hours, kissing and touching Alexis. Afterwards, Bassnectar paid Alexis $300 in cash and instructed her to download the Wicker messaging app so they could stay in touch. On or around July 1st, 2014, Bassnectar flew to Kentucky to visit Alexis. She picked him up. Oh, they have a little typo there. She picked him up from the airport and took him to the Lexington Griffin Gate Marriott, where he stayed for 4 days. During this visit, Ashton had sex with Alexis. Bassnectar paid Alexis $1,600 after he had sex with her. Approximately 2 weeks later, Bassnectar visited Alexis again and stayed at the Hyatt Hotel in Cincinnati for 3 or 4 days. On approximately August 1st, 2014, Bassnectar again visited Alexis and stayed at the hotel in Covington, Kentucky. He stayed for 3 or 4 days. During each visit, Bassnectar had sex with Alexis multiple times. On numerous occasions, Bassnectar solicited Alexis to take and send sexually explicit photographs of herself while naked. Alexis complied. Each time, Bassnectar coerced Alexis, a minor, to take nude sexually explicit photos of herself and send them to him. He engaged in the manufacture and possession of child pornography. And I'm sure, through the whether it's iPhones or whatever, they'd be able to pull up all those pictures. Following the death of her father, Bassnectar told Alexis that he could offer guidance and advice to Alexis, like a father, and do all the things a father would do for her. Bassnectar dictated and controlled every aspect of Alexis's life, telling her what she could or could not do, who she could hang out with, what she could wear, etc. Bassnectar required that Alexis not tell anyone about Bassnectar's contact with her, physical or otherwise. Bassnectar also ensured and required that he was not to be seen in public with Alexa and vice versa. Bassnectar lied to Alexis, telling her that the reason she couldn't tell anyone about their contact or be seen in public with her is because he had never dated a younger girl. He didn't want to be judged, and that no one would understand their love. Between 2014 and 2016, Bassnectar paid for and flew Alexis all over the country to see him while he was on tour. One of these visits, Bassnectar would make Alexis stay in his hotel room the entire time. Bassnectar would have sex with Alexis during these visits. This occurred in approximately 10 different states. Whoa, that's serious right there. In December 2015, Bassnectar had Alexis fly to California to visit him at his home in Oakland. Upon arrival, Bassnectar directed Alexis to take an Uber to a mini mart near his house. The store was located at the base of his neighborhood, and Bassnectar picked her up there. The majority of the visit was spent in Bassnectar's home. Bassnectar had sex with Alexis during this visit. Afterwards, Bassnectar gave Alexis tickets to his show in Virginia. Alexis studied interior design, and Bassnectar informed Alexis that he could get her a job with the prestigious Deborah Burke design firm. Alexis applied for the job and was scheduled for a telephone interview. Bassnectar was present for the telephone interview as Alexis was at his house in California at the time. During the telephone interview, Alexis was asked why she knew about the San Francisco position, given that she had a Kentucky address. At that point, Bassnectar took the phone and hung up. In October 2016, Bassnectar had Alexis fly. That's crazy. In October 2016, Bassnectar had Alexis fly out to see Bassnectar at his home for the last time. On June 13, 2020, Bassnectar contacted Alexis and told her about allegations of a music teacher of his of his in high school having sexual contact with a minor. However, in an attempt to manipulate Alexis, Bassnectar told Alexis that what happened between them was nothing like that. He told Alexis how special she was to him and that he would always love her, in an attempt to maintain Alexis's loyalty and prevent her from speaking out against his unlawful conduct. Moreover, following the posting of evidence against Bassnectar on Instagram. So they're talking about an Instagram site we went to in the last video, but I'm connecting these videos, so it's just going to be one long video. The head of Bassnectar's charitable organization contacted Alexis in an attempt to further manipulate and silence Alexis from speaking out what Bassnectar did to her as a minor. Alexis has suffered substantial physical and psychological injuries and emotional distress as a result of being sexually abused and exploited and trafficked. Cause of action: count 1, conduct in violation of the Trafficking Victim Protection Reauthorization Act. Plaintiffs versus defendant Lauren Ashton, aka Bassnectar. Plaintiffs incorporate each foregoing allegation herein. Sex trafficking is defined by the TVPRA under 22 U.S.C. Code 7102 as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of commercial sex act in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion. Pursuant to 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A, all who knowingly provide or obtain commercial sex that was provided or obtained through force, fraud, and coercion are guilty of sex trafficking. This includes, at a minimum, both the traffickers who recruit, harbor, transport, and provide individuals for forced commercial sex work, those who obtain, solicit, or patronize forced commercial sex work. Pursuant to 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A, anyone under the age of 18 engaging in the act of commercial sex is considered to be a victim of human trafficking. Bassnectar, with the help of the defendants and their resources, used his fame and popularity through the Bassnectar brand to recruit, solicit, and coerce underage girls into commercial sex acts. Rachel Ramsbottom is a victim of sex trafficking with the meaning of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action under 18 U.S.C. Code 1595. Alexis Bowling is a victim of sex trafficking with the meaning of the same codes and is therefore entitled to bring the same action. Yada yada. So the actions, omissions, and or commissions alleged in the pleading were the but for and proximate cause of plaintiffs' injuries and damages. Plaintiffs have suffered substantial physical and psychological injuries as a result of being trafficked and sexually exploited by defendants in violation of U.S.C. Code 1591A. Count 2. Benefiting from a sex trafficking venture in violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, U.S.C. Codes 1591 and 1595. Plaintiffs and all the defendants. Plaintiffs reallege and incorporate Plaintiffs reallege and incorporate by reference all prior and subsequent paragraphs as if fully incorporated herein. Under 18 U.S.C. Code 1591, liability arises for entities who knowingly benefited financially or by receiving anything of value. 2, from participation in a venture. 3, it knew or should have known was engaged in sex trafficking. Pursuant to 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A, anyone under the age of 18 engaging in the act of commercial sex is considered to be a victim of human trafficking. Defendants' acts outlined above constitute a violation of 18 U.S.C. Code 159. 5. Specifically, the defendants had a statutory obligation not to participate in or benefit from a venture that they knew or should have known was engaged in violations of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A. At all relevant times, defendants breached this duty by participating in and facilitating the harboring and provision of plaintiffs for the purpose of commercial sex induced by fraud and coercion by their acts, omissions, and commissions. Defendants knew or were in reckless disregard of the fact that it was Bassnectar's pattern and practice to use the channels and instrumentalities of interstate and foreign commerce, as well as the defendant's resource to entice or recruit young and underage female fans into commercial sex acts. Defendants knowingly benefited from and received value for their participation in the venture in which Ashton, with the defendant's knowledge or in reckless disregard of the fact that Bassnectar would utilize his fame and influence through the Bassnectar brand. Because he had a fan club. He had an actual fan club that was a front to get young girls. To solicit and coerce plaintiffs who were under the age of 18 to engage in commercial sex acts. The defendants have financially benefited as a result of these acts, omissions, and or commissions by their participation in managing, promoting, recruiting, and profiting off of the success of the Bassnectar brand. Rachel Ramsbottom is a victim of sex trafficking with the meaning of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action under 18 U.S.C. Code 1595. Alexis Bowling is a victim of sex trafficking with the meaning of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action under 18 U.S.C. Code 1595. Defendant's conduct was in or affected interstate and or foreign commerce. Defendants knowingly benefited from participation in what they knew or should have known was a sex trafficking venture in violation of 18 U.S.C. Codes 1591A, 2, and 1595A. Defendants knowingly benefited from and or received something of value for their participation in the venture in which defendants knew, should have known, or were in reckless disregard of the fact that the plaintiffs were engaged in commercial sex acts while under the age of 18. Defendants, employees, and agents had actual knowledge or should have known that they were facilitating and participating in a scheme to profit from the commercial sex acts of minor children. Defendants' acts, omissions, and commissions taken separately and or together outlined above constitute a violation of 18 U.S.C. Code 1595. Specifically, defendants had a statutory obligation not to benefit in any way from a venture they knew or should have known to engage in violations of 18 U.S.C. Code 1591A. At all relevant times, defendants breached this duty by causing a person under the age of 18 to engage in a commercial sex act. Defendant's conduct has caused plaintiffs serious harm, including without limitation, physical, psychological, financial, and reputational harm. Count 3, receipt and possession of child pornography under 18 U.S.C. Code 2252 and 2252A. Plaintiffs against defendant Lauren, I guess that's supposed to be Lauren, they spelled it wrong, Lauren Ashton, a.k.a. Bassnectar, but he is on the loin tip. Plaintiffs reallege and incorporate by reference all prior and subsequent paragraphs as if fully incorporated herein. The defendant committed multiple violations of 18 U.S.C. Code 2252. Plaintiffs were minors and victims of these violations of sections 1591, 2252, and 2252A and suffered personal injury as a result of such violations and are eligible to sue and recover damages and other forms of relief under 18 U.S.C. Code 2255. Defendant knowingly solicited, manufactured, received, and possessed child pornography depicting plaintiffs. As a proximate result of defendant's violation of 18 U.S.C. Code 2252A, plaintiffs suffered serious harm, including physical, psychological, financial, and reputational harm. The defendant's conduct was malicious, oppressive, or in reckless disregard of the plaintiff's rights. They are entitled to compensatory and punitive damages and the cost of maintaining this action under 18 U.S.C. Code 2252A. So for those that don't know, compensatory damages, that means like compensation, that means, money, that means, money damages, and punitive damages, that's like the penal system, and that's, going to jail or doing time, all right? So they're asking for both. Wherefore, in consideration of the above claims, plaintiffs Rachel Ramsbottom and Alexis Bowling request that a jury be selected to hear this case and render a verdict for the plaintiffs and against the defendants, and that the jury selected award damages to the plaintiffs in an amount which will effectively prevent other similarly caused acts and adequately reflects the enormity of the defendant's wrong and injuries to the plaintiffs due to the defendant's faulty conduct, including but not limited to A, all available compensatory damages for the described losses with respect to each cause of action, B, past and future medical expenses as well as costs associated with past and future life care, past and future lost wages, loss of earning capacity, past and future emotional distress, consequential and or special damages, all available non-economic damages, including without limitation, pain, suffering, and loss of enjoyment of life. G, punitive damages with respect to each cause of action. H, reasonable and recoverable attorney's fees. I, cost of this action. And J, prejudgment and all other interests recoverable. Further, plaintiff requests that the court enter judgment consistent with the jury's verdict and prays for any other damages and equitable relief the court or jury deems appropriate under the circumstances. All right. So that was out of Nashville, Tennessee. So that's it. So boom, we did it. So yeah, that was it. That's going to be attached to the end of the Bassnectar thing I did a couple months ago. I never released it on TTM Academy because I'm still dropping a lot of the Skater Girl trailers. But we're about to drop I already dropped like 29 free software, YouTube software, 10 sound samplers where you can trigger, different elements from the Skater Girl soundtracks, music kits and stuff like that. But we're about to drop a bunch more of those, hundreds and hundreds of those different patches that you can use to jam with your homies, to produce stuff. But we're also going to be dropping the ones that actually are tied to the actual video too, so you can trigger the sound and see the video clip from the trailers that go with the sound. So it's going to be like an audio video thing that's going to be dropped soon. We just dropped trailer number 3, so check that out. Trailer number 2 is at I think like 210,000 views. So thanks everybody for tuning in on that. Trailer number 2 is at like maybe over 10,000 now, 10,000 views. So thanks to all the Skater Girl supporters, all the Kickstarter supporters. You're all going to get all your packages. And yeah, rest in peace to Eric Cardano. That happened over that time. But we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're also going to be renaming the Chin Machine scratch to the Wonder Cut scratch, because I was only calling that one scratch the Chin Machine scratch because he was the only one I had seen do it. He was the first one I had seen do it. Now, after the passing of Eric, which was very sad, I found that there's some older videos of Eric doing the exact same scratch. So I'm renaming that scratch to the Wonder Cut scratch, and we'll do a whole video dedicated to Eric and all that. So, peace everybody. So welcome back. This is a new semester. We're going harder this semester, way harder this semester. So all y'all people that are, don't like to hear people talk about politics and current events, you guys can go and have fun in your bedroom scratching. Okay, because we're about to really, really go in. All right, so peace everybody. I'm about to tune into I'm about to go to Bump My Homie's radio show right now, H Prism from Anti-Pop Consortium. His show is about to start, or starting right now, on Instagram. So it's instagram.com/hprism, and that's every Saturday at 4 o'clock. So that's instagram.com/hprizm. All right, so peace. All right.